Hello, everyone. Blessed Thursday. Good start. Blessed Thursday, everyone. Happy winter solstice to all the pagans out there. Just about a random stream tonight. Just have a look at what the last joke of the year. It, it's I I like how the whole year has been this this whole year has been a complete mess from start to finish. I mean, to be fair, you could say that it it was a carry on from last year. Honestly, I think you could actually say that. But it you, I knew last year that Boris was going to go. I had just had this bloody feeling, and you know I, what who was going to. The question was always who was going to take over afterwards. And you also had the build up of um, the Russians on the Ukrainian border over last year, and you had some people going, "Oh, it's not going to happen." Well, at the time, I was like, "It might happen. It might not happen." The Americans were pretty damn sure it was gonna happen. And I think, I mean, they were bang on that one, weren't they? The Americans, for once, they were bloody bang on. Um, but again, come back to our politics. Who's going to come after Boris when he, and not only that, but when was he going to leave? Was he going to leave? Was he going to get kicked out? What was going to happen to him? What was going to happen afterwards? When would it happen? How would it happen? Because if I remember rightly, by this time last year, Solstice last year, the Sue Gray report was being whispered about. I think was being talked about. I'm pretty sure of it, something like that. And we, we're like, it can't take much longer. And then some people were like, "Oh, but he's a Teflon prime minister. No one can take him down. He's a slippery fish." And I'm like, well, it can only go for so. It can only happen. It can only carry on for so long, can't it? And it did. It did. I mean, it dragged. He dragged it out. And then when he was kicked out, he treated it as if he wasn't fucking being kicked out, as if he was making his as if it was partly his own decision, despite the fact him saying at the same time, it was also him being turfed out, and just a complete shit show. And we go into the summer, and oh my god, it was almost a summer fair for Tories to say how they've ruined the country over the last decade. I mean, like that. Surely that was asking for trouble. You might as well, at that point, you might as well have called a general election. And then, we're whittling through it. You know, picking the least shittest shit out of the shits, my choice would have been Tom Tugendhat, especially given the war footing. But no, we went with Liz Truss. Why? I mean, I think her only win really was getting Nazanin Zahawi Radcliffe back to the country, right? But even then, that was a case of finally we paid the Iranians what we were supposed to pay them fucking 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Boris could have had this done. The former prime minister could have had this done when he was former secretary, but he could not be bothered because he was going off and having fucking dinners with his rich friends whose sons of Russian ex-spies. This entire year has been a complete shit show. And on the opposition side of things, with Labour, there have been, I mean, for me, it's been a bit of good and a bit of bad and a bit of meh. I mean, I said before and I'll say it again, Starmer was not my pick. But when it comes to whether or not Starmer's a neoliberal, red Tory, well, he's not. He can't defend the media because he helped to fucking prosecute the media, especially the papers. Like, he's not their best mate. He won't be, and he can't be. They won't want it. They don't want him to be. So it's not like Blair on that front. And a lot of the plans I'm seeing don't look neoliberal, if I'm honest. Don't get me wrong. I'm not exactly a fan of what I'm seeing supposedly of more left-wing candidates being blocked from, for being candidates for MP at the next general election. It's a bit. I don't like that. But I wonder how widespread that is. And I also wonder what the tactics are behind it. Because whilst Corbyn got me into politics, my socialist, the socialist side of me does lean more towards Corbyn. He lost 3 elections in a row. You've got to be realistic about it. Idealism is all well and good, but pragmatism is also a thing, and I also do recognise that there was major character assassination from both the Tories and the soft left in the Labour Party, and I refuse to call them the right wing of the Tory Party because they're of the Labour Party, because there is no right wing of the Labour Party. Centre left, soft left, champagne socialist, whatever you want to call it. But he's not he's not on the right. I'm sorry, he just isn't. I've not seen any actual evidence to show that Keir Starmer sits on when it comes to the balance of scale when it comes to politics. I don't see that he's on the right. I just don't. I don't see any evidence for it. And if anyone can show me actual evidence, not anecdotal bullshit that they're reacting, their reactionary mind automatically glues to, I'll be more than willing to accept that he's that he's on the right. But I just don't see it. It's not that I refuse to believe it. I'm not a Starmer stooge, as I've seen this term going around. But You know, if this is the best way for Labour to win, and we on the left should get behind him. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean we shouldn't challenge our leader when we feel he needs to be challenged. Of course he should. Of course we should. We live in we're supposed to live in a democracy, don't we? Isn't it? But we've got to get Labour into power. I grew up. I'll be 29 in. What are we? About 10 days. 10 days. I'll be 29 years old. Right. I grew up. In my childhood was under Labour. Right. The very, very beginning of it was under the Tories, but when I started really becoming consciously aware of my surroundings was under Labour. And despite the fact that I did go through some hardships as a kid, I did note that things got noticeably worse from public services side of things from the end of my school days onwards, and that was the Tories onwards. So people were trying to tell me that Blair was just a red Tory, and I'm like, but he had made sure the NHS was actually, funded. Public services actually being funded. No, it wasn't perfect, but I'm not. I'm also not an absolutist. So, again, given Starmer's former profession, and no, again, I don't believe that he covered up for this fucking conspiracy theory that he covered up for Jimmy Savile. It had nothing to do with the case. It wasn't actually connected to the case. If you look at the actual facts, instead of jumping on the reactionary bandwagon, you'll note that he didn't actually have anything to do personally with that case. And when it was found that there were failings on behalf of the CPS, sorry, he came out and officially apologized, but that's not his fault because he didn't have personal purview over that case. And I get, he could have affected. How? There's no evidence of it, and I've not seen any. I've seen some things of reactionaries. Now I can be rather reactionary myself, but I am more based in science than I am in belief. Yes, it might sound weird coming from someone who's got pagan symbology on their face. However, most of my childhood was growing up being interested in dinosaurs and animals. Yes, I liked fiction, but I preferred the facts. Life, actual things I could that I knew were real. So when it comes to me being an adult, this is the point I'm at. Is if you're gonna go around believing in conspiracy theories like aliens have been down on the planet and have been inducting us and all that, and I'm just like, there is no solid evidence to prove it. Now, that doesn't mean it hasn't necessarily happened. This is true, but at the same time, there's no evidence for it. And stories from the past attributed, and I mean from the ancient past, not from 100 years ago, but from the actual ancient past, hundreds, thousand years ago. Any stories that people attribute to alien abductions are from foreign peoples that look completely different to themselves. I'm sorry, but I'm coming from an archaeological point of view here. And I cannot, from a scientific point of view, it just doesn't make sense. Now, on the swap side of things, I do believe in spirits and ghosts. Not in the Casper the Friendly Ghost sort of way, but I was brought up as a spiritualist and have had my own experiences and have tried, and given my scientific thinking background, I've actually tried to think, I've looked at spirit, the thing about spirits in a rationalized way, and I tried to apply science, a scientific thought to it. Oh, the information that makes us us. Yeah. I know this is come from politics to this, but whatever. I said it's going to be it's going to be ramblings, but what makes us us? The electrical information running through the biological network in our heads. If we follow the scientific principle of information is neither created nor destroyed, is only ever transformed? What happens to the information that is, for example, me, my personality? What happens to that information after I die? Purely following the scientific principle. If information is neither created nor destroyed, it's only ever transformed, where do we go? Now, I get that our bodies die. Does the electricity get earthed? Or, as I have theorized, does it rejoin the static web? Tesla's static web, an invisible web of static electricity that runs across the planet. Yeah, makes you think. Even from a scientific, even from someone who spent most of their life thinking about scientific things, I believe in spirits. Well, in the form of that anyway. The ancestors, so to speak. It's a case of where does that information go from a scientific standpoint? I mean, this is where philosophy and science philosophy and physics meet. It's a random one, I know, but it's where you get the odd notion of facts and the way we think about those facts. That that you take a scientific principle and you apply it to human behavior. For example, one of the things I like, one of the big comparisons I've been making a lot has been the comparison between biological evolution on this planet and its sort of non-linear nature and our cultural evolution over hundreds of thousands of years. And it really makes me think that the linear way that people think of our cultural evolution is just wrong. For example, in the Bronze Age, people know that there were some people who knew what iron was. They just didn't know that much about it. It didn't mean it wasn't there. It didn't mean there weren't some people in the world that hadn't started using iron by the time that, but in the time of the Bronze Age. That this is now an established fact. Go and look for it yourselves. So this is one of the reasons why I can't understand racism, especially from the British. I mean, we're a people of immigrants. Like, that's kind of our origin story. This vitriol towards immigrants, I think, is ridiculous. For the simple fact is that our people are a people of immigrants. How do I know this? We live on a fucking island. How did we get here other than migrate? Like many different peoples. Mesolithic peoples, the Neolithic peoples, the Bronze Age peoples, the Iron Age peoples. You just all those different types of Britons. And what people don't seem to, especially British people who, and even then, even on top of that, it seems to be English people. They seem to forget that the word England comes from the England, right? And land of the Angles, who came from the west coast of Europe, right? As well as the Saxons and the Utes from Denmark, and the Frisians also from the same coast. So, yeah, and a few hundred years later, you had the Franks do the same thing from a bit further south. I mean, the Franks are part of our cultural heritage, as in the Normans, the Norman Franks, I should say. And even then, even before the Normans, the Franks would make raids on the English coast. It's a very convoluted history, but there seems to be this. Oh, if you're not pure British, you can fuck off. What the fuck does pure British mean? There's no um, there's no strain of pure British person. It's just not possible. Like mathematically, it is impossible. I can't think of how anyone can seriously think, oh, you got to be pure British. What does that even mean? What? So what? Pure Celt? What type of Celt? Brittonic? Gaulish? And even then, that comes from mainland Europe. Because it's all related to the Indo-European peoples, the Yamnaya. So, which is like Eastern Ukraine or Western Ukraine, somewhere around the Black Sea. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm sorry to go on this bit of a rant, but I just do not understand racism towards immigrants. I just don't understand it. I never have done. Don't get me wrong, I can get a bit prejudiced towards Americans and stuff, but that's a cultural rivalry, isn't it? And Americans just do my head in half the time. especially when they're stupid Americans. Not all Americans do my head in. There's quite a number of Americans I quite like. But there are quite a lot of Americans that piss me off just as much as British people. I get stuck. I've been. I think it was yesterday. I was talking to some guy. He was in the. He'd been in the army, and he was just saying how COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 wasn't even a thing. I was like, mate, I've read the science journals. Unlike most other people, I actually did pay attention. Swine flu nearly killed me. A/H1N1 virus nearly killed me in 2009. So I'm not going to take this bollocks of, oh, so it wasn't real. It was real. You're just in denial, or you're believing the wrong sort of people. Again, my beliefs are grounded in science. Even my pagan beliefs are rationalized a lot, often by science. That my whole journey towards how I believe in religion, or what I believe in when it comes to religion and that kind of side of things. It was from a science base, from a science and history and historical base, rather than necessarily, I don't if necessarily following scripture and uh, bowing down to some invisible dude I'm supposed to believe in, that's supposed to make my life better as long as I worship him, uh, and not worship anyone else, not even think of worshiping anyone. And it just, I think it's utterly ridiculous. That monotheistic religions, I think, are aggressive. I'm not saying that polytheistic religions uh, aren't necessarily aggressive, but when I think about it, holy wars, I can't think of wars done on the basis of religion that were done by polytheistic cultures. I don't. There are plenty of wars between polytheistic cultures. I just don't recall any that were actually about like a clash between their religions themselves. Not that I can think of. You know, I mean, when the Great Heathen Army came over here, that was a revenge thing, as well as a raid, a massive raid. That wasn't about the Vikings coming over here for their religion, in a holy war. This holy war bullshit, as far as I'm concerned, is a Christian, Jewish, and Islamic bullshit. I have not seen any evidence from polytheistic cultures from ancient history to show that they fought on the basis of religion. Yes, they fought each other. I'm not denying that. But did they fight on, you know, did they fight because they wanted to force the other people to believe in their gods, or did they want to fight to take their resources? Did they want to fight to take their territory? Did they want to fight because they were a rival state, or a rival people? I don't see the kind of religious aggression until you get to until you get to Christians, Jews, and Muslims, especially Christians and Muslims. Muslims on Muslims, Christians on Christians, Christians on Muslims, Muslims on Christians. It's ridiculous. And then both of them picking on the Jews. And the Jews can get just as bloody in return. But it's all on the basis of whose interpretation of God is right. There's a big difference, and to me that just makes their whole belief system aggressive towards everyone, because that means that you believe that everyone else is wrong all the time, unless they believe in your God, and they believe in your God in the way that you believe in your God. You believe they're wrong. You believe you are superior. It leads to a cultural superiority complex. Now, you can tell me I'm wrong if you like, but I would then ask you to prove that I'm wrong. This is just a bit ridiculous. Anyway, to change the subject a bit, we got on to the winter solstice. Not yet, but we're on the winter solstice today, and it reminds me that I wanted to talk a little bit about the census. Details of the census have just started coming out. Now, I was finding some very interesting things. Now, let's see if I can find what I'd been looking for. Oh, no, that was not where I saw it. Hang on, 2 seconds. Ah. Where is it? Ah, there it be. Right. And this one I found quite interesting. So this is the Pagan Federation page on Facebook. And talking about the census 2021 results. And they say here it's worth keeping in mind that whilst we're looking at these figures, that whilst the census numbers are useful, they never tell the full story of the vibrancy, diversity, and activity of faith communities who live together and work towards a common good of all people. The data doesn't evidence the depth of connection within a community, but does show us the fluctuations in the numbers of people identifying with a particular faith, belief, or religion, and growth within the pagan community is definitely clear within these results. Now, hang on. Although we have seen an increase in the number of people declaring themselves pagan, I understand that it's possibly true that many pagans feel more comfortable selecting no religion or their own tradition in the writing box under other. Interestingly, no religion was the second most common response, increasing by 12 percentage points to 37.2%. So that's 22.2 million people and that's up from 25.2% or 14.1 million. That's insane in over the decade. Among the 405,000, 0.7% of the overall population in England and Wales who chose to write in a response, the results were as follows. Officially, like under pagan, 74,000 up. Elevi, I'm not sure what the last count of them were, but that's 26,000. Jane, there are 25,000. The Wicca, 13,000. Ravidasya, 10,000. Shamanists, 8,000. Rastafarians, 6,000. Zoroastrians 4,000, heathens 4,722, and druids 2,489. The largest increase was seen in those describing their religion as shamanism, increasing more than tenfold from 650 in 2011 to 8,000 now. That's a serious jump. As we see the numbers within different religions rise and fall, we know that people will respond to this information in different ways. Some pleased, others anxious, or disappointed. Yet others will be indifferent. They are important and useful, though, as I stated in the blog published just before the census taken. These numbers inform our work. This is the Pagan Federation. They tell us the size of the community we serve and work on behalf of, roughly. The information gathered will have far-reaching. They're not just important to us at the PF either. The information gathered will have far-reaching implications not only on our own provision of services to the pagan community, but also those organizations and institutions that provide other services that we use throughout life. For example, town planning, healthcare, and education. One example of this is the data gathered from the 2011 census, leading to paganism being included on the RE curriculum for schools in Cornwall. Now, that does my head in because it's not on the schools for curriculum in Devon. And I was in school. I'd already started my pagan journey when I was in secondary school in 2011. So, whilst these numbers are without a doubt useful, they will certainly help direct the work that we do over the next decade in conjunction with the feedback from our community as well as that of the government at all levels. They don't show the vibrancy, diversity, and activity of our community. Its members and continue to live and work well together, contributing towards the common good of all. The Pagan Federation has always been a place where different beliefs and ideas are welcomed. I promise that we will continue to embrace our diversity and blah, 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 blah. So, Sarah Kerr, the Pagan Federation president. That's a serious jump. Now, I also watched a uni lecture by Professor Ronald Hutton, I think his name is. And, he referenced the 2011 census and the numbers of pagans in it. And he turned around and said, and he's not the only one. I've seen Tom Rousel as well, who survived the jive, say this as well, that the number is far likely substantially higher than what's officially put down. And they estimated between them, I think it's something like 300. There was like 250 to 350,000 pagans back in 2011. Yet despite that, the official number was something like 59,000. I wonder how those numbers translate to today. And what I find even more funny is that you have the Christians bitching and whining and getting all fucking, oh no, we're now a minority. Boo fucking who? After all the fucking bloodshed you fucking caused. And misery that you've caused. For your God. On behalf of your God. I'm not saying all Christians and Muslims and Jews are evil, but their religion is aggressive. Even towards themselves. The whole thing of my God is the only God that can exist, that kind of mentality kind of affects the way you think. And when it's a part of your culture, when that religion is a part of your culture, again, society, in terms of society, it forms the way you think. And if you think your God is the only God that exists, that means you're right and everyone else is wrong if they don't believe in the same God as you in the same way you believe it. I'm sorry, but it just renders them as an aggressive people, passive aggressive at best. Yes, I like Christians and Muslims and Jews can do good, but to me, the whole act of conversion, that is an aggressive move. Because once again, you're telling someone who believes in what they believe on the basis of no facts, you're telling them to believe what you believe on the basis of zero facts. So I just can't. I just. It's why I call myself anti-Semitic, although I don't. Again, I don't think that's the right term. I think anti-Abrahamic is probably the correct term on that front. So yeah, you know, at this time, I don't celebrate Christmas. I celebrate Solstice. I have a candle up. I had a candle up. It was burning. I think it went out. I mean, I think to back to to the family during the winter days. A lot of times when I think about all the good times of family times, it's always in the winter. And it's always around this time. Yes, bad things have happened too, but a lot of good things. It had nothing to do with Christmas in and of itself. And given that holiday was based on the old pagan traditions, I'm at a point where Christians and Muslims complaining that they're being fucking marginalized, and yet they treat us pagans as if we don't even fucking exist. So I'm like, well, you can fuck off. I don't care. I don't care about your so-called misery of being marginalized because you don't give a fuck about us. You treat us as if we're not even a people, despite the fact that our British culture is based off of paganism. Yes, we're not the same pagans as the ones that the Christians wiped out over 1,000 years ago. But just as like I was talking earlier, with biological evolution, you get reemergences, convergent evolution, a reemergence of paganism, of Germanic paganism, and it's in the multiple forms that it's taking is a good thing to see. A really good thing to see. Now, I'm done with that side of things. I'm gonna move on to the last bit of a random part, but I wanted to talk about a couple of books. It's just a precursor, really, to some videos that I want to start doing. But recently I've been more listening to Discworld novels, and for me, my favorite character of all of the Discworld novels is Havelock Vetinari, the patrician of Ankh-Morpork. Like, that guy is a fucking legend. You like when people think they've outsmarted him, like they either they have, but they haven't, or they just haven't. Because the guy is just so on the ball. Even when he gets caught off guard, he just takes it so casually. I love, and not only that, but I love the fact that he still calls himself a tyrant, or allows other people to call him a tyrant. But a lot of what his the way he treats the government the governance of the city is almost socialist. It's really quite funny. Like reluctantly. It's really funny. I think it was Night Watch. One of my favorite books I listened to was and I do like the fact that you get to see at this point you get to see Havelock as a younger man, and he's hardly changed. Like there's barely any difference apart from some innocence, some younger innocence and some brashness maybe about him. That's about it. Like he's barely like Vetinari barely changes. You take a look at him from look at his character in the book Night Watch, and then you take a look at him in Feet of Clay. Yeah, both times shit goes. Shit's looking to go wrong for him, but he just treats it with such casual ease. I love it. Vetinari's great. I I've got a lot of characters from books that I like, but again, like more recently, it's been more about the Discworld books, like listening to them, and I get a picture of the characters in my head, and I do like Vetinari is one of the best written characters I know that I can think of any series of books. And that is some high fucking praise because I grew up. My first book was The Hobbit. My main author was J.R.R. Tolkien for years. Now, I could get onto other stuff as well, but like my big favorite author for a long time was always just Tolkien. But now I got into other stuff. Anthony Horowitz. On the younger side of the younger generation of authors, Anthony Horowitz books are bloody. I mean, my first introduction to Anthony Horowitz, I think, was the Falcons. No, was it the Falcons Malteser? I don't think it was actually. I think it was Stormbreaker. I think it was indeed Stormbreaker, the first Alex Rider book. But I think I'd read that, then Point Blanc, and then I read I think I found it in a school library, the Falcons Malteser, and they are hilarious. Yeah, they're kids' books, but they're fucking hilarious. And the other thing, one of the things I liked about the Alex Rider books was that despite, even as an adult now, I could read the Alex Rider books and not feel. It doesn't feel like, yes, it's about a teenage spy, but it doesn't. It's not like that stupid Agent Cody Banks bollocks. Yeah. And it gets really gritty, really dark and gritty. Alex Rider series is bloody brilliant. And again, I mean, it's not quite the same sort of character, but well, not quite anyway. But Alan Blunt from that, he sort of reminds me a little bit anyway of Vetinari. It's almost like Anthony Horowitz could have taken some aspects of Vetinari and helped that to help him make up Alan Blunt. Obviously, that I don't think that is what happened, but you might as well have. I've seen some very creepy similarities. Maybe not physically in appearance, maybe. But yeah, I just love it. Going back to Discworld, I just try to think a character that I really the character you feel the most sorry for is supposed to be Rincewind. Now I do feel sorry for Rincewind, but Professor Rincewind as he ends up being. But I kind of feel sorry for most for what was his face? The librarian. I can't remember what the damn orangutan was called for a minute. It was the librarian. Yeah, the librarian of the Unseen University got turned into an orangutan, and I think that was in sorcery. I might be wrong. I think I am wrong. I might have been color magic. It might very well have been actually. But either way, I feel so sorry for the librarian because he just looked like he gets turned into an orangutan, and like he don't give a fuck. He's just like, yeah, you keep your human bollocks. I don't give a fuck. I just carry on doing. I keep my job. I'm good with my job. I can just be an orangutan. I like this shit, but he gets dragged into this crap. So much crap. It's like Gaspode in a way. Dog, talking dog. I'm surprised actually that I did. When it comes to Discworld, I'm surprised that I didn't see Gaspode in the Amazing Maurice and his Educated Rodents. I'd love to have seen the Amazing Maurice come back. I don't know. I did listen through pretty much all the books. I can't remember if Amazing Maurice was ever in any of the books or of the other books. Hang on. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't think. I think he comes back. I do want to have a. I do want to find out whether or not he does. I don't know. It doesn't seem like. It doesn't seem like he did. It would have been nice to see Maurice come back, Maurice and the Rats in other books, and I do. I think I would have really found it funny for to have Gaspode, the talking dog, come across the Amazing Maurice and his Educated Rodents. Like, you got who's he hanging around with? Who's that damn dog hanging around with? I'm losing my mind right now. I'm trying to remember it's a beggar dude. Bloody hell, I can't bloody remember. Hang on. Gaspode. See, Gaspode was in loads of the books. I would like to. It would have been. I actually would have found it more fun, even more funny, if the Maurice had been added to more stories. Foul old Ron, that was it. He was hanging around with foul old Ron. Bugger it. Millennium Hand and Shrimp. I know what the fuck that guy's all about. I love Discworld books. But then you could talk about funny books. Derek Landy, my God, as a comedy writer, he's hilarious. I hear about other comedic writers, Tom Sharp being the one that my mum brought me up around, but Derek Landy is absolutely hilarious. I love the sarcastic way he writes. I mean, I forgot. I actually don't know if I can't play the recording because he's on Audible and I get copyrighted. Please don't fall. Please don't fall. Yeah, that's it. It's his dedications. Like, there's just some silly ones like, oh, I can't remember. Was it Mortal Coil, I think, or Deathbringer? Skullduggery Pleasant books, by the way. And in his little dedication bit at the beginning, like I think his nieces have been born or something, and he's complaining how everyone's got time for the baby and no one's got time for the all. I just like the flippant sarcasm is fantastic out of Derek Landy. I absolutely love it. And the world he's created, where he's blending magic with modern, like with the modern world, sort of like Harry Potter, but better, sort of. Hello, girlie. What are you doing? What? You up now, are you? Come here then. Dad. Ah. This is Freya. Say hello, Freya. Yes, I know. I know. Is it bright? Is it? Oh, you can go back there then. Yeah, like that Derek Landy. It's one of those Irish authors that I learned stuff about Ireland I had no idea as well because of listening to and reading Derek Landy's Skullduggery Pleasant series. I also liked that Demon Road that he did. That was a pretty damn good book. I really quite liked that. It was different compared to the Skullduggery stuff, but that was bloody good. I was very freaky with the way the guy with the car and the stuff with the girls with the girls' parents and stuff. Fucking hell. Like shit. But yeah, no, like I said, it was just, I mean, Skullduggery Pleasant. I'm trying to think of my favorite character, and I would probably say that it's Skullduggery himself. To be fair, I mean, there are other characters I actually do really like from that series. Tanith Lowe being one of them. Tanith is epic and quite a tragic character, really. Although with Derek Landy's books, quite a lot of the characters. I mean, so is Skullduggery Pleasant. He's a tragic character. Valkyrie ends up being a tragic character. Spoiler alert. But he's now expanded it onto a second series. And it's not like the story feels tired either. It feels like a natural progression. I love it when the author is able to do that. Like the series of books ends, and they want to then they start they carry on with that sort of storyline on a new series of books, and there's proper continuity. That's what I was looking for. And again, the humor that he writes with, it is so engaging. Like I just every time I listen to it or read it, I have a smile on my face. It's hilarious. Now another Irish actor that I find is really quite funny. He's again, the stories are a little bit kiddish, but even as an adult, I love the stories. And it's the Artemis Fowl books by Owen Colfer. I haven't seen the film, and I still don't know if I want to. Yeah, I'm very unsure about Artemis Fowl. I haven't seen any reviews of the film because, well, I don't know. I don't want the books ruined for me. You know, Lord of the Rings wasn't that bad in that regard. I mean, The Hobbit was good. It was The Hobbit was more like a glass ball covered in oil. Something you keep hold of it, but like sometimes it would just disappear on you if your grip slips, and that's how I saw the accuracy of the Hobbit films. Like sometimes they were bang on, and sometimes it was like, where did that? That's not in the lore. That's nothing that even Tolkien that neither of the Tolkien's written down. What the fuck are you doing? But there you go. No, you always get it. You always get that these oddities. But again, I just don't. It's like I'd like to see a film done for Skullduggery Pleasant. You have to get it done right because of all of the imagery in those books. Like it could so easily go wrong. If it's not done with care, it would so easily go wrong, and that's what I'm kind of worried about with Owen Colfer, with Artemis Fowl, sorry, because to me, again, it's very visually imaginative. Like when I read a book, I see the story as like a film in my head, or if I listen to a book, or I lay on my bed listening to a book in the dark, I can almost see it as I'm hearing it in my head, and it's one of the reasons why, and I'm now moving on to a completely different author, but it's one of the reasons why I didn't, I, c- I cannot stand Aragon, the movie. Like, I love the books. The Inheritance Cycle is such a good set of books. Like, you get a Game of Thrones, good set of books. Game of Thrones, brilliant. But to me, Aragon, Eldest, Brisingre, Inheritance, The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, it's such, the world building is so good, and it's entranced me since I was a kid. Since I first came across those books, it's entranced me. I mean, I've always loved dragons, and the Tolkien side of thing helps there. But you know, for me, Paulini even went into the whole trying to make your own languages and stuff to a certain extent. I loved that about it, and he made his own map. That's a guy really, really loved the story he was making, and I loved the story he made, and I can't wait to see what more comes out from that side of things, from the Aragon story. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what happens to Martag and Thorn. Bloody brilliant. But yeah, for now, that's it from me. Again, blessed Thursday, everyone. It's now the end of the solstice. Well, sort of. Do you want to go, do you? Again, I'll put bot then. Yeah, I'm going to be off now. And I do hope everyone enjoys yawn. Don't try to stay warm, stay safe. And don't believe what Tories tell you. And read some good books. The books I mentioned tonight, fantastic books. Check them out. Again, this has been Shadow Wita. Please like, subscribe, comment. I noticed there's not been anyone on tonight, but I wasn't expecting it. But if anyone retroactively watches this, please please join me for future live streams. I'm going to keep doing this whether people watch it or not, because pagans need to get our voices out there whether we're ignored or not. That's just how it is. Well, again, I hope everyone has a good evening. Bless the Thursday, everyone. Good night.